Welcome into the Wellness Lab, the podcast that teaches you the art and science of unreasonable health, wealth, peace, and happiness. If you've been listening for a while, you've noticed there's been a shift. It's time for a new conversation, one that's more focused, one that is more intentional, and one that is ultimately more powerful. So, with that in mind, and as I mentioned, this show's new focus is going to be around focusing on health, wealth, peace, and happiness. There's a framework that I've developed over the last 15 years of teaching, and I keep coming back to it, not only for myself, not only for clients I work with personally, but anytime I seem to be on a podcast or seem to be on a summit or talking about health or wellness or business or spirituality, what I've noticed is that all the same rules apply to these four different buckets of health, wealth, peace, and happiness. It's not like they're operating on different games or different systems. And what I've noticed is in order to make a change in any of these dimensions, we need to develop a sense of awareness first. And there's a great line from my teacher, Dennis Adams, who says, "You can't change a habit until you're aware of the habit." And for me, that's really where mindfulness, that's really where change, that's ultimately where self-transformation starts. That's not where it ends, that's for sure, but it is the beginning of that transformation, much like the butterfly that was once the worm or the caterpillar. So, what I want to do today is take maybe the next 10 or 15 minutes to go over this foundational framework that I've developed over the last 15 years around how to be aware, create more mindfulness, how to walk through choices, and ultimately how to choose the right actions for yourself in any moment. If you've listened to some of the meditations I've done, or if you listened to the one I did previously around breath work, I start every meditation with this lesson I learned, which is find the breath that's right for you. Well, finding the breath that's right for you is a metaphor. It's a metaphor for finding the podcast that's right for you, finding the teacher, finding the coach, finding the job, finding the partner. Whatever's right for you in the moment, that's what you should start to do. At least that's what you should start to do if you want to develop more happiness, empowerment, fulfillment. So let's start with the framework on how to do this, how to eventually get to that place where we can start to know what's right for us. Because until we know, we don't know. Until we're aware of the habits, we can't really change them. So this is the foundational piece we'll start with. The first thing that we need, and I've already talked about this now, is we need to develop a sense of awareness. Okay, a sense of presence, a sense of how am I thinking? How am I feeling? How's my energy? How's my mood? Right? Once we know those aspects of ourselves, well, then we can start to understand ourselves deeper. We can start to get more information that we want to use to change. So how do we start to develop awareness? That's really the piece to start with. You can develop awareness through almost any modality. And I tend to see the world through yoga when it comes to awareness, but it's not the only lens. That can be very limiting. Anything can work, right? So yes, if you're into yoga, great. That's a way to develop mindfulness. If you're into meditation, that's a fantastic way. Tai Chi, Qigong, dancing, ballet, art, right? Embodied movement, writing, speaking, okay? Drawing, all these things, all these different modalities are really portals for us to tap into the same space. And that space is the present moment. And that would be present moment awareness. Any way you want to get into that space or any way that works for you to get into that space, that's how you get in. For example, my wife, she's not a meditator. She doesn't do yoga, but she's an artist. And when she does art and most recently pottery, 5 hours will feel like 5 minutes to her. She'll lose track of time, space. She'll forget to drink. She'll forget to eat. She won't know where she is. And when she comes out of this almost trance-like experience and comes back into kind of the world around her, well, she's lost touch with kind of this limited reality we live in, and she's really tapped into present moment where no time and space exists. So any way you can get into present moment is how I suggest that you start to develop more awareness. I notice for me, making podcasts like this or coaching people or sitting with others is a way for me to really get out of my own head and into my own body, to be more embodied. So I'll ask you that. What are the techniques? What are the tools? What are the ways that you've learned to get more present? And as you're listening to this, and if you can, maybe write down some ways, what do you enjoy doing? What are you passionate about? What lights you up? I find those are the places and the spaces you really want to start to look for when you want to develop awareness. If you don't like something, if you hate it, yeah, it can work, but it can be a lot more challenging, at least at first. So start easy, start with something gentle. How can you start to be more present today? Okay, start to notice. Notice your language. That's a really simple way to start. Something I've worked on in the past is not using the word like. And I don't know if anyone else has tried that who's listening or watching, but what I've noticed is once I bring awareness to the fact that I'm using the word like all of the time, and I try to remove it from my vocabulary, I then find it very hard to speak. I find it very hard to not say like. It's almost as if I'm learning to speak in a new way. And it wasn't like I wasn't doing it before. I just wasn't aware of it. Once I'm aware of it, then it starts to show up everywhere. And it can actually be a little unnerving. Let's admit that to it first with awareness. You've heard ignorance is bliss. Well, there's a reason you're not aware of what you're unaware of. You're unconscious. If I say, hey, today I want you to go look for a red Tesla. After listening to this, you will now go find more red Teslas. Why? Because you're aware of it. Your mind's looking for it. Also, we wonder, well, is there co-creation happening here as well? And you're now manifesting that? Potentially, I'm open to that. How do you bring more awareness? I think the first thing is through slowing down. That's key. Slowing down and getting your nervous system to a space that feels relaxed, calm, present. And then from there, it can begin to grow. So back to the language. Go back to listening to your thoughts. Notice when you say, oh, I have to do something, or I hate this, or I hate that, or I start blaming, or I start shaming, I start complaining. These are all ways to tell you that you're not present. You're either stuck in the past or you're projecting into the future. Once you start to catch yourself in these different realities of unpresence, let's call it, or unconsciousness, you've already started to develop more awareness. Now, doesn't mean you're instantly going to change these patterns and these habits, especially if they've been there for a long time. But once you see it, then you can start to develop a relationship with it. You go, you know what? Once I start complaining, that tells me I'm not present. Once I start blaming, that tells me I'm in judgment. I'm making something greater than or less than. I'm trying to validate myself. I'm trying to validate someone else. I'm trying to pick a side. These are all signs that you're not in the present moment. The present moment is neutral. The present moment doesn't judge. The present moment doesn't take sides. It's simply awareness. Awareness of what? Awareness of what is. Awareness of what's happening inside and outside. But I highly suggest you start with your awareness inside first, because once you have that, then the external realities around you, they can't push and pull on you as much. So develop awareness through slowing down, calming your nervous system. Go back to the podcast I did a couple weeks ago around breath control and doing one-to-one breathing. That is a fantastic portal into breath work. And you can do that anywhere. I have a friend who's a fantastic tattoo artist, and I taught him the one-to-one breath technique. And he's going, oh my God, I'm so much more present. My art's getting better. It's getting easier. Well, it's the same technique, but you can apply it to art, dancing, yoga, public speaking, working. So do that. Start to slow down, calm your nervous system, and start to develop more awareness. Really what I'm saying is I want you to start to watch your habits. Notice your tendencies, right? Notice what you do. Notice your expectations. Notice your assumptions. Are you saying, oh, I'm going to have a tough conversation with Sally. Every time I see her, it's a fight. Well, yeah, of course it's going to be. You've already predetermined in your mind and that's how it's going to go. So just notice if that's in there. Notice the fears, the doubts, the noise, the mind chatter, the tendencies. I'm not present. I'm thinking of lunch. I'm kind of doing that right now. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. And part of awareness is simply going, oh, this is what my tendencies are. These are my mental grooves, my mental patterns. And as you start to notice them, you can then start to rewire them. That can happen instantly, but it also can take time. So step one, develop awareness, build awareness. You need to practice relaxing. You need to practice being aware. You need to practice coming back to presence, right? You need to practice recognizing when you're not present, catching a thought, releasing it, not judging, coming back. That's all a skill. That's all a skill that develops over time. You'll increase your capacity to be more present. Step one. Step two is once you start to develop more awareness, now you can start to develop more present moment choices. Okay. And I used to say we always have a choice. And I actually don't believe that anymore. What I believe now, I loosely will use the word believe. I want to be careful with what I say I believe because those become limiting in the reality. So, but something I loosely believe right now is that we don't have a choice until we have awareness. Before we had awareness, how could we choose? We're just on unconscious patterning, right? But once we see the pattern, once we see the habit, once we see the tendency, then we can start to go, okay, I'm acting this way. Do I want to continue to act the same way? If yes, carry on. If no, time to change. So here's 4 options you can do. We'll call them the 4 mindful options that you can do at any moment once you have awareness. So remember, practicing awareness, building it over time, so then you get more present and then you can run through these 4 options, okay? Number one, your mindful choice that you always have is to accept what's happening in the present moment. And that doesn't mean 90%, that doesn't mean 99%, that means 100%. I accept what is happening and that is it. Now, that doesn't mean you like it. That doesn't mean you agree with it. That doesn't even mean you want it to continue, but you say, this is what it is. This is what's happening. And I fully accept it and I don't judge it and I don't make it wrong. Whatever you resist persists. Okay. So if you don't resist something, if you accept it, there is no friction, right? There is no push or pull. In essence, you are removing all stress from the situation. This is a master level technique, is to be in full acceptance, maybe even surrender. And again, it doesn't mean you agree. It doesn't mean you like it. It means you are simply saying, this is the reality around me, and I fully accept it in this present moment. And there will be nothing for it to push up against. And ultimately, it won't push up against you and your energy and your ability to stay present. Number 2 is accept what's happening and make a change. Okay, notice I said accept and change. Don't not blame and change, not make it wrong and change. What is an example of this? Okay, I can look at the political landscape and I can say, all right, I don't agree what's happening currently in the world. I'm not highly political, so I don't really have too much of an opinion currently on politics, but I can say, okay, I don't like what's happening here. Now, that doesn't, again, I want to accept what's happening so there's no resistance, but then also make a conscious change. What can I do to start to shift the realities inside me and around me? What can I do with myself, with my family, with my community to impact change? We don't want to impact change from a place of making other things wrong, like the war on drugs, war on crime. It doesn't work. When you make something wrong, it pushes against you. Now we have a push-pull polarity happening. And as we've seen, it doesn't work. Look at Republicans and Democrats. It never ends. Someone's right, someone's wrong, always. If you can get to a place of neutrality and saying, accept what's happening, but I don't agree with it and I'd like to see a change in the world, then go out there and create that. Again, not from a place of something's wrong and your opinion's better. This is a place of preference of I would like to see something different in the world, and therefore I'm going to take action to make that happen. Maybe a more simpler example is I don't like driving in traffic to work. Well, if I still have to go into the office every day, then maybe I will choose to live closer to work. Okay, there's an example of acceptance and change. Option 3 is accept and leave. Okay, accept and quit. Again, notice I'm throwing in the acceptance piece for all of these. It's not make it wrong and leave, right? It's not judge someone, make them less than or greater than and leave. No, it's I've taken a look around. I'm accepting what's happening around me, and I'm not willing to partake in this person, place, or thing's energy. Okay, again, I could take it back to the example of work. Well, I've decided I don't want to commute to work. My company's not going to allow me to work from home. So then what do? Well, sounds like it's time for me to accept that and leave my job, leave the company. Now, notice I'm not saying resist it, because if you resist it, you're going to create more karma, you're going to create more issues for yourself. I'm also not saying that by leaving, you're not going to have repercussions. You can quit your job, sure, that's a choice. But also know there may be repercussions that come with that. And I'm not negating those. I'm not denying that those are realities. All I'm saying is you have a choice to make that decision for yourself as an adult. I'm safe. I don't like what's happening. I accept it and I want to make a change and I'm willing to deal with the consequences. Now you are in what I would call empowered living. You are an empowered sovereign being making your own decisions like an adult. There's a book behind me called How to Be an Adult. It's a great book. Go check it out. Option 4. And this one I do not necessarily suggest, but what I found is if you do this, it can help you learn a lot faster. So number 4 would be to resist. Resist what's happening to you, right? Make things wrong, make things better than, judge things. And what you may find is by being in resistance, you create more drama and trauma for yourself, which helps you get the lesson faster. And if you're doing this from a conscious lens of awareness, now I'm just playing a game. What happens if I'm an asshole? What happens if I'm mean to someone? What happens if I let someone walk all over me? What happens if I'm in resistance and blaming and shaming and guilt? Well, let me find out, because as an aware being, look at all this data you're now getting that you weren't getting before. So it's a great way to hyperactivate learning. Again, be careful with this. I'm not suggesting that I don't want that karma, but I'm throwing it out there as a sovereign being, you have the option to decide your reality. So those are your 4 choices: accept, change, leave, or resist. Go practice this as you will, but you're going to couple it now with the ability to have more awareness. Once you have your choice, then we need to move to action. Okay, so awareness, choice, action. Those are your 3 steps. Now, action, I would say the right word here would be right action. Okay, that could sound judgy, but it's not. What is the right action for you? Is it to accept? Is it change? Is it to leave? Or is it to resist? That's up for you to decide in every present moment. Find the breath that's right for you. Find the choice that's right for you. Find the action that's right for you. And that will, as you'll notice, as you develop more awareness, will change every time you make the choice. Why? Because you're in present moment, not in conditioned pattern reality. When you're present, anything is possible. You can act in any way that you feel is in accordance to alignment in your own present moment. Now, the caveat here is, and this can be challenging to learn as well, is if you're going to say, I'm going to live from my right actions, what can be challenging here is to then let others live in their right actions, because you don't get to say, well, it's okay for me to live in my right action, but this person can't. They have to accept my right action. Well, no, they don't have to accept it. They can change it, they can remove it, they can resist it. So this is where you got to start to stay open to, oh, there's an energy that of what I'm working as an individual, and then there's also the energy of what the external is working as, you could call it the totality. There's an individuality within a totality, as one of my teachers would say. That is a great way to realize that there's things happening in you in the micro and things happening outside in the macro. And learning to play those off of each other is a really important way to develop your own sense of awareness and presence. Find your right action and then let others live in their right actions as well. This is a really challenging space and place to get to, but something, again, you need to practice through awareness, through developing choice, and then stepping into action. And then maybe the last thing on here is, as we step into right action and right choice, you've got to develop a sense of internal confidence or structure that says, I'm going to take my right action and I'm okay with the repercussions, or I'm okay with being judged, or I'm okay with someone not liking it. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with that they have the inability to say no because they're afraid of not being liked, right? They're afraid of what someone else might think of them. They're afraid of being judged. They're afraid of someone being upset. Well, then are you living from empowerment or are you living in fear? Are you a sovereign being or are you a prisoner to the thoughts and emotions of others around you? Because if so, nothing wrong with that. Develop the awareness to understand that, but then start to ask yourself, well, who's actually in charge here? Who's actually making these decisions for me? Is it me or is it someone or something else? In a previous podcast, I talked about the happiness equation. Well, who put those on there? Was it you or is it this aspect of you that doesn't want to be judged or wants to be liked, or doesn't want to be seen as a failure, or has to be, is attached to their identity? These are the things you're going to start to learn as you develop more awareness, more choice, and more right action. So as you take right action, be willing to be judged, be willing to be blamed, be willing to be seen as an outsider, because you know what? At least you're present. At least you're the one deciding how to live in your life. At least you're the one deciding how to create your own reality. I'd rather you not like me for who I am than like me for who I think you want me to be, because the other person probably doesn't have enough awareness to notice that is happening in them either. So now we're just these masks interacting with each other where no one's being authentic and no one's being genuine, and we're all just living in fear of being judged by others for being our own true selves. So shine bright like the light behind me. Turn up your light. That takes confidence. That takes some guts. That takes some spiritual guts, some spiritual chops to say, I know who I am. I know why I'm here. I know what my mission is, and I'm going to speak it to the world. And there's going to be people that don't agree with it, and there's going to be people that agree with it, just like what I'm saying right now. And that's on me to be okay with being judged for being seen as someone that has a point or someone who doesn't. And all that matters at the end of the day is, does this resonate with me? And am I willing to share it with you? And then the same process is going to happen for yourself. Through awareness, what are you learning about yourself? What are you going to start to share? How are you going to start to be differently? How are you going to show up in the world that's going to start to make shifts and changes? And to bring this all in for a landing, as you develop more awareness, you'll be more present. You'll have the ability to run through options of how you want to interact in the moment or not, and what you want to do. And then once you know what to do, you'll then have the confidence to act upon it. And as I started before, health, wealth, peace, and happiness all abide by these same laws, these same rules of how to play the game. Get present, decide how you want to be in the world, and take action. If you do that, you'll find that you are a much more empowered, present being. And my money's on, you're going to be happier, you're going to be more successful, you're going to be healthier, and you're going to start to impact the world around you in a very positive way. And people will soon realize you're doing things differently and go, hey, what are you doing differently? You seem different. You seem more confident. And just by being yourself, you're going to have positive ripples that affect the world around you. And you'll never even know how far those ripples go out. But just know and trust that they're there, they're happening. And the more present you get, the more aligned you get, the more empowered you get, and the more you'll impact the world in a very, very positive way in yourself, your family, your community, and ultimately in the universe. So take this, go practice this, be aware, run through choices, step into your right action, and don't be afraid to be judged. And if you need help, as always, reach out, send me an email, leave a comment, like and share if this helped you. I never charge for this podcast. The only mission here is that we elevate the consciousness of the universe one conversation at a time. All right, until next time, take care of yourself, be healthy, be happy, be well. Much love.